Hola, hola. I'm Zulean Cruz-Diaz, your Texas Rican host, and this is Una Preguntita. Each week, you and I take one big question and break it down to grow in this real and messy life we live in. From engineering to farming in Hawaii to running my own business, I have learned that life does not come with a manual, pero sí con preguntas, with questions. So, tell me, amigui, have you ever felt like you're thriving in one area of your life but lost in another? Yeah, been there too. Each week, you and I dive into the stuff nobody really teaches us, how to lead, connect, and communicate better, y con tools that you can actually use. Grab tu cafecito, get comfy, and let's figure this out together. Esto es Una Preguntita, where curiosity and understanding lead to action. Vamos! Okay, amigui. I am so excited for this podcast today because I have a special guest with me today.
Hola.
Hello. Bienvenida, amiga.
Thank you, ma'am.
So, Deidra, to give my amigui, our listener tuning in right now, a little background, I'm going to tell them a little about you, okay?
Oh, Lord. Okay.
Amigui, let me introduce you someone who makes uncertainty look like a walk in the park. Deidra Johnson is the powerhouse behind Parachute Marketing and Branding Management. She's the brainstorming buddy every dreamer wishes they had on speed dial. Deidra's the kind of person who can take your messy, I don't know what this is yet idea and turn it into a full-blown strategy. Her brain built different. She sees connections you never thought to make and explains big concepts in a way that even your baby primito can understand. Her career path has taken wild turns. I'm talking corporate life, nonprofit work, construction, education, you name it. If you're in a season of change or feeling like everything's up in the air, trust me, you're about to feel a whole lot better after this conversation. Deidra, welcome to Una Preguntita. I'm so glad you're here.
Thank you for having me.
All right, amiga. So, to give you a little background on the pod, we always get started con una preguntita, a question. Deidra, what is the most drastic change you had to work through?
Losing my first business and losing around $125,000 before I was 30. So it was the money I had saved. It was money I gained from inheritance to use to start a business. And the business was on track to be successful. And then there was a random, just a black swan situation that wasn't anticipated, couldn't have been foreseen. And I had to shutter the business within 6-7 months of opening and almost lost everything. I was served foreclosure papers and stayed in bed for about 2 months and had to get back on my feet because I knew if I wasn't dead, I'm not done.
Damn. That is a story. So in case you, amiga, listening in, feels like something big, scary, drastic change is coming up, I can assure you it could potentially be worse.
I don't want to cheer people up and be like, it could be worse. And as one of my closest friends, I always say but did you die? And that's that's my personal benchmark on things because I have seen death literally and figuratively multiple times over. So for me, I know my emotional fortitude is extremely high and higher than most people. So I can handle a lot more, but I don't think that we should tell people who are experiencing something negative or experiencing something crippling that, be grateful. It could be worse. Because that could be their worst day. Just because it's not our worst day doesn't mean it's not their worst day. So we should be sympathetic and empathetic when possible.
Yeah. Thank you for that mind switch, that that change in perspective, because it's true, right? Not everybody has the same experiences. And so for somebody that going by themselves to a restaurant doesn't seem really scary, like very scary, versus for somebody else, that is the biggest feat that they might ever have to face.
Yeah, some people can't struggle with placing an order by phone.
Right.
But who are we to criticize them for something that we may be stronger at?
Mm-hmm. So I want to go back to something you said. So it took you 2 months to get out of bed. What did you do? What was that thing where on day, quote unquote, right, let's pretend it was day 60, something had to shift inside of you to get you out?
Well, let me also say that I was in bed for 2 months, but I showered every I didn't just simmer in funk for 60 days.
Let's make sure that's clear.
I was hygienic. I just showered. I'd get up out of bed, shower, and then go back to bed, and eat every once in a while. What got me up? It was, I probably want to say it was God talking to me, or me remembering something in scripture that reminded me that my failure, I may have failed, but I am not a failure. And so it was realizing that I am not a failure, and even though failing is now part of my identity, part of my past, it doesn't define me. And so when I realized that and came to terms with that reality, then I was like, oh, well, okay, yeah, that sucked and it was hard, but I'm not dead, and there's still things to do in life. And the sooner I start moving forward, the sooner I can start getting over whatever I experienced.
That's super important to notice, because a lot of times we take experiences that we've gone through and then we put a label on ourselves instead of the label on the experience. And so being able to detach yourself from that in order to keep going, because you've gone through something big, you've gone through something scary, you've gone through the quote unquote opposite of success, however you define success, being able to transition, especially when we've grown up, and you, amigui, listening in are probably a high achiever as well. We've grown up with metrics, right? Like when we were back in school, you went to the next grade and you knew you had to get good grades, and you knew you needed to be in extracurriculars, and you knew you needed to volunteer, and so on and so forth, right? And so there were certain metrics you could use to measure if you were on the right path, quote unquote, right path, or not, right? And if you stayed on that path, you got closer and closer to what is traditional success, right? Quote unquote success. But once you graduate, whether that's high school, whether that's college, right? There's no direct path. And so all of those metrics of measuring if you're on the quote unquote path to success, they're gone. There's no clear path. The uncertainty of, okay, now what, starts to really set in. And that is icky. Like, what do I do now? And because we're so guided early on, uncertainty feels scary. So, Deidra, let's pretend the person listening in right now, my amigui, is going through a shift, a new challenge for their life, whether that's a job, a new city they're moving to, or thinking about maybe switching careers, right? They've ran into a roadblock and they need to shift. What mindset does my amigui need to be in, or need to shift, when you begin to face uncertainty and change?
I think back to my days as a Girl Scout, and the motto for scouting is be prepared. So having that engraved into my mindset ever since I was 6, 7, 8 years old, early elementary school, that always taught me to, as I grew up, to always have options, or to give yourself opportunities, put yourself in opportunities where you have more options, because it's better to have something and not need it than to need something and not have it. And then that forces you into making decisions based on emotion, typically fear, as opposed to making logical, sound decisions. And another thing is to ask yourself, what are you doing today that is going to get you closer to what you want tomorrow? And I have that framed on the wall. So that helps me with my decision-making process, especially when it comes to situations, experiences, events, activities where I want to say no, but feel emotionally compelled to say yes. And I ask myself, is saying yes to this event, activity, experience going to help me get to where I want to be tomorrow? And if the answer is no, then it makes it easy for me to decline that involvement.
Can you repeat that Girl Scout quote again?
Be prepared.
Be prepared. So this is actually a perfect transition, because my next question was going to be, what's your process when you're in a sticky situation? And I think you kind of started getting into it, right? So your first quote is be prepared. Your second is ask yourself, what are you doing today to get you closer to your tomorrow? Is this what you use to figure out how to transition, or do you have something else that you like to think about?
I think of the Scout motto, be prepared. I think of the quote, ask myself if this is going to help me get to where I want to be. I keep in mind some sage advice from my Aunt Cleo, who says, you can't catch a blessing with a closed fist or a closed hand. So that's really important and this happens a lot, especially in corporate America, in any job, any workplace setting. People gatekeep, and gatekeeping is a really unfortunate situation. And gatekeeping is trying to control a blessing and trying to prevent abundance. And so I believe and try to operate with a mentality or mindset of abundance, and knowing that if there's a blessing for me, there's more than likely the chance that the blessing is available to other people. So who am I to withhold it from the world or whoever I'm interacting with? Like, I think it's important that we be good stewards of whatever resources, gifts we've been allocated. So we should just be mindful, be conscientious of being good stewards of what we have, whatever that is.
I think what you're getting to the point of is the zero-sum game, right? So where let's pretend you have a pie, right? One singular pie. And if somebody comes in and takes a sliver of the pie, you're like, oh, I have less of the pie now.
Yeah.
Versus if you have the mindset of there's a lot of pies. If somebody brings a pie or somebody takes a slice of any of the pies, like, it doesn't matter. Yeah. We're all still having a great pie party.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. Like, there's more than enough of everything to go around.
It's really interesting. I have been so blessed with all the people that I've surrounded myself with and that have naturally just come up in my life, because they have been very transparent. And in this transition of when I went from being a full-time employee working in the nonprofit world into an entrepreneur, there's a lot of things you don't know.
What? No, there's no manual for this?
What? And so with being able to first have the mindset that, like, if I know something, if I have a certain skill, or if I know something, to be transparent to anybody around that really does need that information or needs that support.
Yeah, like, I have a magnet on my refrigerator that says, and I even would tell my students this quote, and the quote is, if I can't be a good role model, at least let me be a horrible example. So I'm either going to do my best and do well, or go downhill in a dumpster fire at top speed and just be like, hey, this is a bad idea, don't do it. Instead of, keeping it from other people and then letting you go off and make the same mistake. Like, why?
So what is your process when you're in a sticky situation? Like, my person listening in, my amigui, is a high achiever and likes those bulleted points. We're still on that track. Can you give me certain points, like frameworks that you use in order to be like, I do this, then I do this, and then I do this?
I don't want to bring age into this, but since I'm slightly older than you,
it's like that. What is it, the reel that's going around?
Yeah. I will say that my barometer, my threshold for F's to give is a lot lower. So I stopped caring about a lot of stuff. But my decision-making process is, does it bring me money? Does it bring me joy? Does it make my life easier? And is this reflective of a Proverbs 31 woman? So I have Proverbs 31 printed and framed, and I see that every day, and I've had it framed since 2010, and that's my reminder. That is my go, no go decision making element. So does it make me money? Will it make me money? Is my selfish, vain first criteria. Then does it make me happy? Does it bring me joy? Can I do it? And then I validate that decision with, is this something a Proverbs 31 woman would do?
And can you tell me a little bit more about what that woman is?
So a Proverbs 31 woman, let me pull that up. So a Proverbs 31 woman, or the verse, the passage, praises a wise and capable woman. It highlights her strengths, her honor, and her confident outlook on her future, or on the future of her and her family. The verse itself it says, a wife of noble character who can find, she is worth far more than rubies. Her husband has full confidence in her and lacks nothing of value. I'll move on to another part of the same scripture. She gets up while it is still night. She provides food for her family and portions for her female servants. She considers a field and buys it. Out of her earnings, she plants a vineyard. She sets about her work vigorously. Her arms are strong for her tasks. She sees that her trading is profitable and her lamp does not go out at night. Skipping over to another, she opens her arms to the poor and extends her hands to the needy. When it snows, she has no fear for her household, for all of them are clothed in scarlet. Fast forward, she is clothed with strength and dignity, and she can laugh at days to come. She speaks with wisdom and faithful instruction, and faithful instruction is on her tongue. She watches over the affairs of her household and does not eat the bread of idleness. Her children arise and call her blessed, her husband also, and he praises her. Many women do noble things, but you surpass them all. Charm is deceptive and beauty is fleeting, but a woman who fears the Lord is to be praised.
That's so interesting. Because I think whenever we're talking in society, we think of, I want to be like independent. I want to grow into a self-sustaining individual. But it was already written in such a beautiful way in the Bible, where it encompasses that and more, because it takes a part of, you're part of a community.
You're part of a community. It's not just you being a submissive wife or a homemaker, Susie homemaker, and that's all great, but it's about a well-rounded woman.
So are those the things that you think about when let's pretend you're at a turning point, right? You mentioned money. You mentioned money equals sustainability.
Right.
You mentioned joy, happiness, which is your emotional part. And you also involved your faith.
Right.
In the sense of the teaching of how to be sustainable.
Yeah.
And how to remember that you're part of a community and you support the community.
Yeah.
So is that how you make decisions? Is that how you're like, if it checks off 1, 2, 3, this is what I'm going to do?
Yes, and it can't just be self-serving.
That's super important.
Yeah, there have been, and I know there will be many opportunities available to me that only benefit me, but at what cost? And that cost isn't necessarily towards me. I consider a cost as how does it keep someone else from benefiting? Mm-hmm. If I can't share it with someone, what good is it?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's very powerful. So how do you stay clear-minded? O sea, I think it's very easy to decide black and white, a decision, yes or no. Mm-hmm. But how do you get into seeing what all of your options are? Like for me, it's very easy to be like, this is a decision. Am I going to, let's say, apply for this job? And for me, I think of it as yes and no. But you could theoretically shift up and change things. Like you have to first ask, why are you applying for the job? Right?
Yeah.
Or you can ask, is there flexibility in the job description or the framework? So how do you get from yes and no to this one thing to creating options for yourself?
This may be silly, but I think of a very simple day-to-day thing that we do. I don't think we're really conscientious about it. And I call it checking the fridge. So if you were to make dinner tonight and you opened your fridge, there are tons of items in there that you could use to make dinner. Mm-hmm. That could give you countless options on your final result. Now, are you going to make all of the possible options with the items in the fridge? No. And you're not going to, because you are going to factor in how many people are you serving? How long will it take? Do you want to put in all the effort to make all that food for one person or a little bit of food for a lot of people? There's so many other criterias, right? So what I do is I check the fridge, quote unquote, check the fridge of what's available. And I first assess what I've got to work with and then compare that to what I need. And that helps reduce the amount of combinations that I can create. And that gives me options, which allow flexibility. So I'm not confined to just one decision, to one option. I have multiple options that check off that certain criteria. Dinner for 6, made in an hour, vegetarian only. So I check the fridge, I see what I've got, and I apply the criteria to it, those parameters to it, to help create a certain amount of options. And then I choose from there. So that gives me flexibility. And any option from that combination is something that would make me happy. So I'm not confined to just one decision. And if that outcome doesn't happen, I'm not disappointed. So regardless of the outcome, I'm still happy with the options available.
Wait. Okay, so amigui listening in, did you hear that? Essentially, you consider your situation, instead of the decision, you consider your situation as if you're opening a fridge. And so that was a beautiful analogy. Like, it's true. You open your pantry, you open your fridge, and you're like, I can cook a lot of different things. But understanding what are the specific things that need to either happen or the criteria, that will determine what you end up choosing.
Right. So let's say you wanted to make chicken stir fry today, and you wanted to make chicken stir fry and you needed dinner ready in 1 hour. Let's say you have frozen chicken in the freezer, but you don't have time to thaw it. And that, even though you have access to it, you don't have the other resource, which is time, to make it happen. Mm-hmm. So even though you could do it, you can't do it now. So that crosses that possibility off the list. Then you start working with what you do have that you can use and implement now, the least extenuating, least energy exerting, least expensive, the least costly of your resources to get the best outcome in your criteria.
Okay, so this was a great analogy. Can you bring this into an example in real life?
Let's say you have a person, someone who's recently graduated, and they are in their starter role or their second role, and they're ready to make a transition. Mm-hmm. And they know that climbing the ladder means higher education, getting a master's degree, or let's just say higher education. They may not have the money to pay for a master's degree. Okay, not a problem. They want to go to Yale. Okay, not a problem. Good for you. Go to an Ivy school, but you can't afford it right now. So now what? Well, what if you can't go to an Ivy school, but you can get a certificate from an Ivy school in a field or in something that's industry specific? So instead of spending another $20,000, $30,000 on an advanced degree, you spend a fraction of that to get you paper, to get you certified, to get you the designation that says you're trained in that area, and now you are a subject matter expert. And that's a workaround. So finding route B, C, and D to get you to your destination. That's, seeing what's available, but also expanding on checking your fridge. Let's say you're in your first role, your starter role, and you work for a company that has tuition reimbursement benefits. And again, you want to go to a school that has an expensive degree. Cool. You can't afford it. Now what? Well, you can use your benefits from your employer to pay for a less expensive degree at a level 2 institution, or use your employee benefits to pay for that fancy designation from Yale or London School of Poli-Sci. Not that I've done that. I stacked my certificates. I checked the fridge. So just finding another workaround to get you to where you're going, because there's always more than one way. There's always more than one route to get to your end destination.
So what do you want to leave my amigui listening in? What do you want to leave them with today?
I want to leave them with a quote from Teddy Roosevelt. Mm-hmm. It's called The Man or the Woman in the Arena, and it highlights the importance of taking action and facing challenges. So the quote is, "It is not the critic who counts. It's not the man or woman who points out how strong the woman or man stumbles, whether the doer of deeds could have done them better. The credit belongs to the person who is actually in the arena, whose face is marred by dust and sweat and blood, who strives valiantly, who errs, who comes short again and again, because there is no effort without error and shortcoming. But who does actually strive to do the deeds? Who knows great enthusiasms, the great devotions? Who spends their time in a worthy cause? Who at the best knows in the end of the triumph and high achievement? And who at the worst, if they fail, at least fails while daring greatly, so that their place shall never be with those cold and timid souls who neither knows victory nor defeat."
It's actually pretty brilliant. It goes back to one of the first things you talked about, right? Like, what are you doing today to get you closer to your tomorrow? Because that is what's going to drive you forward and leave the rest in the dust.
Yep. And also, but did you die?
Maybe that'll be the title of the podcast.
But did you die?
If you enjoyed this podcast just as much as I enjoyed creating it for you, please share it, rate it, and write a review. What did you take away from today? I'm sending you un huge abrazo y nos vemos en la próxima.